I'm an Uber driver, mainly working in a large suburb outside Las Vegas. The city is a bit sketchy sometimes, but this suburb is known for being a nicer area, so I never found myself worrying too much. Sure, I'd get some weird people sometimes, but they were usually just drunk, high, or otherwise intoxicated in some way. I had worked for a few months with no issues, and found myself actually enjoying the job. On this particular night, I was working around my usual time between 6 and 10 p.m. It was one of those nights where I was getting a lot of passengers and making a lot of money. When 10 o'clock came around, I chose to keep grinding out these pickups and make as much as I could. The very next order after 10 was from someone 18 minutes away, at an undefined location. This wasn't out of the ordinary. It usually just meant they were on the side of a road somewhere or outside of some place that wasn't on the map. I zoomed in and saw it was right next to a storage garage. I began the drive, and when I was 5 minutes away, I got a call from the customer. "I'm gonna be late. I need you to wait a few minutes for me." "Thanks," he said quickly, breathing heavily like he just ran a mile. The man hung up right after. I couldn't say I'd ever had someone tell me that they were going to be late, but I didn't mind waiting a few minutes. I knew if I cancelled the ride, then he'd have to wait another 10 to 20 minutes for a new driver to arrive. And I was hoping that by waiting, he'd give me a little extra tip money. When I arrived, I didn't see anyone outside, so I pulled into the storage garage parking lot. I waited for 5 minutes. Then I saw a man in my mirror. He was walking quickly out of the storage building, holding a large duffel bag. When he got into my car, a nasty odor emanated from him, and I also noticed that he was dripping in sweat. It was really gross. I had picked up people from the gym before, so this wasn't too terrible, but it never made for a good experience. I tried to not make a face and greeted him. The man said nothing, so I got back on the road. During the ride, the man held the duffel bag on his lap and stared forward without speaking a word. It made me feel uncomfortable, so I didn't speak either. After a 20-minute drive of awkwardness, I finally arrived at the destination. It was a corner of a street, not an address. Before I could even shift into park, the man hurried out and started walking away. After all that, I wasn't expecting any sort of tip, which was a disappointment and enough to get me to call it quits for the night. During my drive home, I noticed that the smell never left my car, even when I tried rolling the windows down. It was so bad that I had to pull over and check to see if he had left something in the back seat. I opened the door and immediately saw some red spots on the seat. I'm no expert, but it looked like blood. I called the police, and after some looking, they confirmed that it was indeed blood, and there was a lot of it. We tried to track the Uber account, and the next day they even contacted the storage unit, but had no luck with identifying the man. After thinking back on all of it, though, I'm sure that guy did something terrible. Just a minute before I picked him up, he was sweating and carrying a duffel bag with blood soaked into it. On top of all that, he used fake accounts with both Uber and the storage unit. It really showed me that even in a place that's considered to be nice and safe, there are still terrible people doing terrible things. I took a week off from Uber, then got back to it, but I'm way more cautious about who I'm picking up. I'm a truck driver for a moving company based on the East Coast. We specialize in cross-country moves, primarily to the far west coast, which can range from 20 to 40 hours depending on the locations. My role was solely focused on driving and picking up, or dropping off the trailer at the houses. I had been with the company for almost 4 years, and this particular job was like any other. I arrived at the pickup address and loaded up the trailer with the customer's belongings. This move was going to be a 30-hour drive, which meant I would need to take short rest stops along the way. As a truck driver, I knew that the Midwestern states, particularly Iowa and Nebraska, could be challenging to drive through due to their vast stretches of empty roads and fields, which made for a monotonous and tiring journey. By the time I crossed the Iowa border into Nebraska, the sun had just set, and I had been on the road for about 20 hours. I was starting to feel the drowsiness kick in, despite already taking a short break earlier. The long, empty road ahead didn't help keep me awake. However, as I continued driving, something caught my attention on the side of the road. There was a car parked off to the side of my lane, with its headlights on. It seemed strange to see a vehicle stopped on such an empty road. As I approached, I noticed that the car's exhaust was steaming, indicating that it was still running. Furthermore, there was a man leaning against the driver's door, looking directly at me. I passed by the car, giving the man a nod, but as I looked in my rearview mirror, I saw him getting back into the car. It struck me as odd for someone to be sitting alone on the side of an empty road with a running vehicle. He didn't appear to be in any obvious trouble. He seemed to be waiting for something or someone. I kept driving, now feeling a bit more awake, although my eyes still felt heavy. Just a mile or so down the road, I encountered another peculiar situation. There was a car sideways in the middle of the road, blocking my path. Beside it, I saw a large box van parked on the side. It sent a chill down my spine, and I had a sinking feeling that something wasn't right. I began to ease into my brakes, but the car remained in the middle of the road, forcing me to come to a full stop. As I got closer, I saw several men standing along the road, with one man positioned in front of the car. It became increasingly clear what was happening. Realizing that I had no better options, I started reversing the truck. The men stood their ground with a disturbing confidence. Suddenly, a car pulled up behind me, shining its headlights and blocking my retreat. A man jumped out of the car and sprinted toward the back of my trailer, while the men in front of the car began running toward me as well. In that moment, instinct and adrenaline took over. I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, hearing a loud thud as the back of the trailer made contact with something. The trailer door swung open, and the men in front yelled as they jumped to the side of the road. I raced forward, crashing into the car and pushing it off the road, causing it to be completely wrecked. Gunshots rang out in the distance, but fortunately, none hit me. I could hear cargo falling out of the trailer for the next few miles before I managed to call the police and arrange to meet an officer on the road. As the chaotic scene unfolded, it became apparent that this was more than just a random robbery attempt. When the police arrived, they discovered that the attackers had targeted the wealthy homeowners, who were in the process of moving. One of the attackers, who had been apprehended, provided information about the others involved. It turned out that they had gathered information about the move and planned to intercept me, steal all the belongings with their box van, and likely eliminate any potential witnesses. Although they never explicitly stated what they would have done to me after the robbery, it was evident that they intended to tie up any loose ends. The incident was a complete mess, but I was grateful that I had managed to escape the attackers and reach safety. It served as a stark reminder of the dangers that can lurk even in the midst of a seemingly routine job. From that day forward, I became even more vigilant and cautious during my drives, understanding that my role as a truck driver carried unforeseen risks. I was driving for DoorDash on the weekend to make some extra money. Since I had a day job, I could only start delivering later in the night. It was a little past 9 when I received my first order. I dropped it off and returned to the area with the restaurants. I circled around for about 10 minutes, without getting a single order. It was late, but I expected there to be a decent amount of orders on the weekends. Finally, an order popped up, albeit a small one with a small tip. I accepted it anyway, since some money was better than none. After that delivery, I waited in a parking lot for almost 20 minutes before the next order came through. It was frustrating to wait for so long between orders, and I couldn't even choose which orders to accept unless I wanted to wait even longer. This next order was also small, but I accepted it and picked up the bag from Taco Bell. It only contained the tacos and some packets of hot sauce. The delivery fee was probably more expensive than the food itself. I confirmed that I had picked up the order and received the directions to the customer's house, which was about 10 minutes away in a regular neighborhood. As I drove along my route, I pulled up to a red light. The road was nearly empty at this time of night, and a truck pulled up next to me. Out of curiosity, I glanced over, and the man in the truck caught my attention. He was sticking his head out of the window, looking down into my car, not at me, but at the DoorDash bag in my passenger seat. His behavior was peculiar and made me feel uneasy. I quickly turned my head back, and when the light turned green, I pressed on the gas. I checked my mirrors, and the truck was now behind me, maintaining a significant distance. I couldn't say for sure if he was following me, given that the route was straight until the neighborhood. However, when I turned into the neighborhood, the truck turned in behind me after a few seconds. My suspicions grew stronger, especially after his intrusive behavior earlier. The route guided me through a few turns in the neighborhood, before leading to the last road with the address I was delivering to. As I made the final turn, I noticed a dead-end sign a few houses down. I braked and pulled over, anxiously watching my rearview mirror. To my dismay, the truck pulled in behind me and parked. I sat in my car, trying to come up with a plan, while the truck remained idle with its headlights on. Suddenly, I received a text from the DoorDash customer asking about the delivery's arrival time. Everything started to click, and I realized that the man in the truck, likely the customer, was waiting for me to get out of my car. Although I understood the situation, I felt trapped without a clear escape plan. After a minute of panicking and brainstorming, the man stepped out of his truck. I watched him closely through my mirror as he stood near the trunk, peering into my car through the shattered back windshield. Tension filled the air, and my mind raced with fearful thoughts. Then, without warning, he forcefully struck something against the windshield, causing it to shatter. I wasted no time. I shifted the car into drive and floored the gas pedal as the man attempted to crawl into the car, through the broken glass. Fortunately, he fell off as I made a tight U-turn, and by the time he recovered, I had maneuvered past his truck without further damage. I witnessed him stumbling across the street in my rearview mirror. As I sped away, immediately dialing 911 to report the incident. When the police arrived, they found only the broken glass scattered on the road. I felt grateful to have escaped, with nothing more than a broken windshield, but the events of that night left me shaken for months. I couldn't help but worry about whether the man was out there, trying to trap more people and commit who knows what kind of harm to them.